This is Cruise Radio.
Cruise Radio is brought to you in part by tripinsurance.com. Travel insurance done right by the people who know travel insurance. Get a quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida.
This is
Cruise Radio. Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here, my friend. Staff writer Richard Sims is off this week. He will be back on Sunday. So stepping in for him, well, not really doing the news, but fielding your listener questions, especially about hurricane season and cruising during the season. President of tripinsurance.com, Dan Skilken. We also have a review of Carnival Breeze coming up later on in the show. By the way, before we get to Dan, if you want to have the news Monday through Friday, we have the feed just opposite of this one. It's called Cruise News Today, and we deliver the day's cruise news in 2 minutes or less, so not wasting any of your time. And speaking of that, Dan Skilken is on the line, president of tripinsurance.com. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Doug.
You have some big shoes to fill today, but I think you'll handle it. They're all trip insurance questions. The first one comes from Billy. When is it too late to purchase travel insurance during hurricane season, and what coverage would be impacted if a storm is already named and I went to purchase a policy?
Billy, it's never too late to purchase travel insurance, but I think your question is actually, is it too late to get coverage for a hurricane if the storm is named? Typically, every insurance policy out there has a provision in it that says that if a hurricane is named by the National Weather Service, then it's a known risk, and insurance only insures you for unknown risks. So if you buy the plan after the hurricane is named, it's considered a known risk, and the insurance won't cover it. But if you buy the plan before the hurricane is named, then it's an unknown risk, and you're definitely covered for that hurricane. So first of all, what we recommend people do is buy the insurance as soon as you possibly can. Don't wait. There's really no motivation to wait to buy your insurance policy, because the earlier you buy it, the better coverage you're going to get, because, hey, I bought it before the hurricanes even started, before the hurricane season started. So if something develops, you're covered for it. But you're absolutely right. If you buy the plan after a hurricane is named, you're not covered in that plan. Now, there's two types of hurricane coverage that you really got to look at when you're evaluating your plans. One, almost every plan out there has coverage for if your destination is made uninhabitable by a hurricane or by a bad weather event, then you're covered for cancellation. The issue here is that a cruise ship, interestingly enough, is not a destination. The cruise ship is a common carrier, and the ports of call the cruise ship stops at are not considered destinations. They're considered scheduled stops by a common carrier. Your actual hotel is on board the cruise ship, and that's a common carrier. So you're sort of looking at this and saying, well, is that a catch-22? A lot of times during hurricane season, we strongly recommend our clients book a hotel the night before the cruise departs, and maybe a hotel when the cruise arrives back at the port. The reason for this is because that automatically makes the cruise departure and return point a destination, because it's on your itinerary as an actual destination. You have a hotel there. So that automatically becomes a destination. Now, if a hurricane is named for the departure point, then you're covered. You know, if a named hurricane hits that departure point, then you're covered. The other much better hurricane coverage that is available in some of the plans, for instance, our U.S. fire plans on tripinsurance.com, include a hurricane warning being issued in the 36 hours before your scheduled departure for a destination on your trip. And this, again, is why you'd want to book a hotel prior to departure or on the return, because that's going to cover you for the hurricane portions. So that covers you for trip cancellation as well as trip interruption. And we can talk a bit later, Doug, perhaps about, because I think you've got some other questions lined up here about what happens if I'm delayed or that sort of thing. But I think, Billy, the point here is to buy your plan as early as you possibly can when you book your trip.
And a follow-up question, Dan, he says, what about post-departure coverage in case a hurricane disrupts my cruise after it has already begun?
Well, typically travel insurance doesn't cover you for the cruise being diverted to different ports of call or trying to avoid a hurricane, bad weather at the sea, that sort of thing. That is typically not covered. But if you end up having to return to a port you weren't anticipating, that you had bought airline tickets, for instance, to return home from a given port, and they don't get you back to that port, that's covered under the misconnection portion of a travel insurance plan, and you have coverage for extra airfare to get there, as well as any travel delay that you might have that will cover the hotel, food, and local transportation if that occurs.
Our next question is another Hurricane One from Tiffany. It says, if my cruise is cut short due to a hurricane, what kind of compensation or coverage can I expect from my travel insurance policy if the cruise line also provides us with a prorated refund?
Travel insurance covers you for your losses, your financial losses. In this particular case, if you were reimbursed by the cruise company, say, if it was a 3-day cruise and you lost 1 day of your cruise, and they gave you back 1/3 of the cruise, the insurance company would consider that you didn't lose anything. Now, it is possible that their reimbursement back to you would be less than what your actual loss was. And in that particular case, I would recommend you file a claim. It makes sense to file a claim. Just keep copies of the receipts and keep copies of what the cruise company paid you so that the insurance company can actually figure out what your true loss was and pay the claim accordingly.
Heather has the next one. She says, if I was left in port by the cruise ship because I booked my own excursion and did not make it back on time, would travel insurance help me out?
No, probably not. And it probably wouldn't cover you if you bought the excursion from the cruise company either. The issue here is that the wording on the plan is set up to cover you for delays of a common carrier getting to the cruise ship. But if you're already on the cruise and you take a port excursion and the cruise ship leaves without you, you're going to incur the cost to catch back up with the cruise ship. And so my strong recommendation for anybody, look, when I take an excursion, I've got my watch. I've got a timer set up on my watch. I am looking very specifically on when, for instance, we have got to depart to return back to the boat, and to give myself plenty of margin, at least 45 minutes before their scheduled departure, to make sure that I'm there. And I check when I leave the boat, because, there's somebody helping you off the boat. When is the boat leaving? Mm-hmm. What's your name? Okay. And you tell me this when the boat's leaving. So that you know you're responsible. You're harping on the excursion company to say, this is when we've got to go back. I've got to be back on board the ship. Don't get trapped by, we were having fun and we lost track of time and we missed the boat.
Our last one is popular from Sheila, Tori, and Daniel. They ask what to look for in a policy and the best way to save money without sacrificing coverage.
First of all, number one, only insure the trip costs that are subject to cancellation penalties. And we've got a lot of people that try to split hairs here and say, well, I've got this tour, and if I cancel 3 days before the trip departure, there's no cancellation penalty. So should I insure that as well? And our argument back would be absolutely, because what happens if you cancel in the middle of the trip? If you get hurt or sick at the beginning of the trip and have to return home, will you lose the balance of that tour? Will you lose the balance of the cruise? So insure any costs that are subject to cancellation penalties, but only include those trip costs that are subject to cancellation penalties. My next major one is don't automatically buy your travel insurance from your travel supplier, like your airline or your cruise company, because you're going to get better coverage at a better price if you comparison shop on a site like tripinsurance.com or any of the other sites out there. First of all, the rate tables typically target different age demographics, different prices of the cruises. And so, the difference in the trip cost. And so what ends up happening is that when you do a side-by-side comparison, you can look and say, this one has better coverage and it's lower cost than the other ones, and it was cheaper than what the cruise company offered me. I'm going with that. Now, when you are evaluating plans, I generally don't recommend people buy the cheapest plan out there because it rarely offers the best value in terms of coverage. A low-cost plan is generally priced that way because they remove coverage or covered reasons from the plan or coverage amounts from the plan. The reason this is important is if it doesn't cover your loss when something happens on your trip, the plan is basically worthless. So it'd be better to pay a little bit more for much better coverage. So I typically don't necessarily go for the cheapest plan out there. Doug, if people have any questions like this at all, whether they're buying from us or not, they are welcome to contact us at support@tripinsurance.com. Send us an email or give us a call. Come to the website. You'll find the phone number there. Give us a call. Sometimes they're surprised. I pick up the phone a lot of times because everybody at our company does customer service. That's our most important role. So hopefully if your readers phone in, I'll get a chance to talk to them.
He is the president of tripinsurance.com, Dan Skilken. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time, my friend.
Doug, thank you for having me on. Everybody enjoy your cruises this year. Hope the heavy weather doesn't affect too many of us or the crazy airline delays, but know that we're always here to help.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Just back from a cruise? Let's talk about it. Email Doug@cruiseradio.net.
Eric and his family just returned from a 5-night cruise aboard Carnival Breeze from Galveston, Texas. It went down to the Western Caribbean, we'll call it, kind of. He joins us on the line. How you doing, Eric?
Hey, Doug. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you're over in the Baton Rouge area, Louisiana, and you had to make your way over to Texas to sail this. But before we do that and talk about you embarking Carnival Breeze, we'll take a step back here. What made you want to take this 5-nighter on Breeze?
Yeah, so a few months before October of last year, we took a 4-nighter out of Galveston. And, even though we only live about an hour from the port of New Orleans, we were so impressed with the way that Galveston operated and how smooth embarkation was. And of course, we do enjoy the Dream class ships. 10 years ago, we sailed on the Dream when it was in New Orleans. And when we found out that the Breeze, which is also in the same class, was in Galveston, we said, yeah, we've got to go. And so this time we decided to do the 5-night to try to check out Progresso. And it was kind of a no-brainer. And it was Father's Day week, so it was kind of a splurge for a Father's Day trip too.
We were chatting before the interview, and you said it's typically a 4-hour drive from where you live to the port, but you ran into a little snag you were talking about.
So this was around the time that I think Tropical Storm Alberto was coming in. Mm-hmm. Now, this was a separate incident, but we encountered some pretty hairy weather all the way over there. And as we talked about in our interview, for whatever reason, drivers on I-10 just forget how to drive during the rain. So our 4.5-hour trip turned into an almost 7-hour trip. Wow. Just wreck after wreck, traffic jams here and there. So it was a little bit restless. And on this trip, we brought our 2-year-old toddler with us. And after 5 hours in the car, she's pretty much ready to get out.
I can only imagine. So you mentioned it's typically a 4-hour drive, but it took 7 hours. Did you leave the day before, or were you like pushing 10 down the interstate to get to the cruise port?
Oh, no, we always go early. That's standard practice for us. There are so many bridges and things between us and Galveston that we just don't want to have to rush it. And realistically, for us to get there for 10, we'd have to leave here at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So we just go the night before, and we usually get a hotel somewhere a few minutes north of Galveston. I think this time we stayed in Webster, right there close to the space station. So super nice part of town, easy to get to. But we figure that into the budget because we don't want the stress of being the last people to get on the boat.
Now, Carnival just redid Terminal 25 out there in Galveston. Did you embark there or the other one behind that one?
So we embarked on, I think it was either 25 or 28. I get the numbers mixed up. Yeah. I don't think it was the freshly redone one, or it could be. We haven't been sailing out of Galveston long enough to know the difference. But I do remember that we embarked at one terminal, but then when we got back that weekend, we actually disembarked at a different terminal because the terminal that we embarked on was the one that the Jubilee was disembarking on. So I guess they take priority over that. Depending on the cruise traffic, depends on how bad the parking situation is out there. How was it for y'all? Yeah, so we actually parked at the garage that is directly across from the terminal. We pulled up in the car, and we were sitting in the car looking directly at the ship. Nice. Was super nice. The parking wasn't that terribly expensive either. It's again part of our budget. But we got in. Traffic was not a problem. Took the elevator down. Walked across the street because they are currently doing some renovations to that garage. So there's like a skywalk that goes across the street, and it's closed, I think, until the end of the year or something. But we just walked right across the street, and the porters were waiting for us. There was zero issues getting in, and I was thrilled that we did that because of the mass chaos that we saw unfolding with people that were trying to drop their luggage off and drop people off and then go park. Yeah. That wasn't worth it. So the garage parking was incredible. Have you ever dined at that restaurant right there in front of where Jubilee would be? Was it Fisherman's Wharf? We thought about doing it this time because we did get down into Galveston a little bit early, but we were right in the middle of a 2-year-old toddler's nap, and I was not about to upset that schedule. No, I hear you. So you make your way to the cruise terminal. How long did it take you to get from the curb to the cruise ship? There were a couple delays, but all in all, it was maybe 25, 30 minutes tops. We did something a little bit different this time. We knew that we were going to be coming on board with extra luggage because of our toddler. So, and we don't quite have the status of gold. We don't quite have the status of diamond or platinum yet. So through some gift cards and points and stuff, we were able to get faster to the fund for a little bit cheaper of a price, which put us through the priority line, which was super nice. You walk in the terminal and we go left while everyone else goes right. And we're walking past literally thousands of people that are waiting in line. They got us up quick. The only real delay, we had 2 small issues. One, we got to the end of the line where it's like the last Carnival person with the iPad checking you in and saying, okay, you're good to go. It was an older gentleman, and I don't think his iPad was working properly. So the priority line started backing up, and I guess they didn't have enough staff. And then all of a sudden an announcement comes over the intercom, and they're closing the gangway, and we're not sure what's going on. And about 10 minutes later, here comes a group of customs agents with a gentleman in handcuffs walking off the ship. And so then they opened the gangway, and we were headed right back in. But other than that, the process was smooth and quick. Galveston does a good job of funneling people in quickly, and they have ample people there to answer questions and get you going. And one of the biggest differences that we have found with Galveston and New Orleans, because like I said earlier, we sailed out of New Orleans before too. In Galveston, they don't let you stop. If you get past the station or something and you decide, hey, I want to wait here for a second, no, they make you go to the designated waiting areas, which I think is great because there's no traffic and you keep moving. Yeah. Man, what a way to be arrested, right? A spectacle, getting off the ship with all those people watching you. And it's like you don't want to be nosy, but it's like you kind of want to know what he did. Exactly. He looked like he had seen. Yeah, he looked like he had seen a ghost or something. He knew he messed up. So, and he had already made it past the checkpoints and on the ship. So my only assumption is that maybe there was something in his check bag that shouldn't have been there. I'm not sure, but I was glad that we were still headed in the right direction while he was headed the other way. Now, you mentioned you really like the Dream class ships. So what were your first impressions this time around walking on board Carnival Breeze? So just a little background about who came with us. It was myself, my wife, Paige, our 2-year-old Ava, and then our cousin, Sherry. And Sherry has been on cruises before, but never a Dream Class ship. Mm-hmm. And Dream Class is the only thing my wife and I have ever sailed. Not really any particular reason other than just that's what's in the ports whenever it's time for us to go. And if anyone ever gets behind us when we're walking on the ship, they may chuckle or just say that we're crazy. But we kind of have that moment where we just pause, and then when our footsteps on the boat, it's like, we're back, we're here. So, we knew what to expect when stepping on the Breeze, but it has that typical Carnival atrium. And whenever we stepped on, the first thing you do is you look up. The beautiful atrium goes from deck 3 all the way up to, I think, deck 12. It was just beautiful. It's not quite as extravagantly decorated as like the Spirit class ships or anything like that. But we were happy to be back. It felt, walking on the Breeze feels like being at home. It
is certainly interesting how the atriums have evolved over the years, going back to the Fantasy class, which there are still 2 left, Elation and Paradise, and then, moving on to Spirit, Conquest class, Dream, Vista. And then when you hit Vista, boom, the elevators are gone, and it's more of like a resort, I guess, just that dreamscape in the middle. But anyway, so what kind of stateroom did you book on this cruise, and how were your thoughts of it throughout your sailing?
So we ended up with an interior again. On our previous cruise in October, we did interior for the first time, and we've kind of decided that interior rooms are really made for us. We did have to get a little bit creative on the booking, which we talked with our PVP person at Carnival, and she said it was fine. Obviously we knew that in our room it would be myself, my wife, and our daughter, and then we would like to have had a neighboring room with our cousin next to us. Well, we like to stay on deck 7 for the good reason of there's rooms above you, below you, and around you. There's no noise. Mm-hmm. And it's fairly central. So we had to get creative with the booking and actually do myself and my daughter in my room, and then my wife and our cousin Sherry in the room next to us. But it just ended up working out fine. Yeah. Stateroom was fine. It was clean. We knew what to expect with an interior stateroom. And I think I've heard several folks on the show mention before that interior rooms make for very good midday naps. And we agree with that.
Now, you mentioned you got creative, though. So how does that work once you're on board? You go to guest relations and say, "Hey, look, we're gonna do a little room swap here with the key cards."
Yeah, well, basically, and that's all there was to it. And our 2-year-old, they gave her a room key. Well, she's 2, she's not going to use it. Right. So my wife just kept that one with her. Whoever was going to have Ava with us, we would keep that card with her. She had her little bracelet on too. But we just informed guest services, and we informed our stateroom attendant, and they understood. They said it was fine. Because whenever we were doing the booking, at the time to get a 3-person room, if you wanted an interior, they would typically stick you on first, second, floor, and we weren't wanting to go down there. Yeah. So this was kind of our easy out, and everything was still the same price, the same cost, and everything. I think the only difference with Carnival with an infant is you don't have to do the prepaid gratuities. They don't extend gratuities, and this might not fit in this area. But at first, paying full price for a 2-year-old, I was a little upset about. But I'm going to tell you, after the way that we saw the Carnival crew members cater to our 2-year-old, we will gladly pay full price for our 2-year-old every time we go on a cruise.
How does it work with, so I've never traveled with a little one before, but do you bring your own pack and play, or do you request it from the cruise line?
You can. They have that option whenever you make your booking. The pack and play is free and complimentary. I don't know if they're guaranteed. Mm-hmm. We didn't get one because we knew that it would just be easier for her to sleep with us. Yeah. And interior rooms don't have a ton of extra room. So we just knew that it would kind of be a waste of space. And they do also have options for you to rent a stroller. Mm-hmm. We ended up bringing our own, which was an absolute lifesaver. She runs, she loves to explore, but for some reason when we got on the boat, she forgot how to walk. And packing around 40 extra pounds is not much fun. So the stroller was a very, very good use. And also at the main dining room, they, whenever we got to our table, the high chair was there waiting on us. And it was just, and it's fun, when you go around with the toddler, she steals the show. The crew members love her. And actually, I think she ended up getting about 8 or 9 different little ducks from guests and crew members.
I love it. Speaking of dining, let's talk about the buffet area, the Lido Deck Marketplace up at the top. How was your experience there throughout your 5 nights, and any kind of crowds or congestion in the buffet space?
So the weather played a big part in different areas of this cruise, and the Lido Deck was one of them. We were going out in the middle of the first named tropical storm. I think it was Alberto. So sea days, the Lido Deck was extremely crowded. We never really had an issue with finding somewhere to sit. People were pretty good about once they finished eating, they got up and they left, and the crew was always very quick to come and clean up. We always avoid the Lido Deck on day one. It's just kind of a rule of ours because we've seen enough of it. Day one, we ended up settling in the Ocean Plaza and got some of the guys' barbecue and sat there and people watched for a while. Other days, we would frequent the Lido for lunch. My favorite day, I think it's usually the day that we're in Cozumel. They put out the international portion of the Lido, and I always hunt down the jerk chicken. I love the jerk chicken. But compared to our previous Carnival cruises, even the one that we did in October on the Breeze, the buffet this time, it was just a step above. They really went above and beyond. The food was always full and fresh, and it could have just been because of the demographic of people on this cruise. There were a lot of families, and I mean a lot of families with kids, which made us feel pretty comfortable bringing ours on. Mm-hmm. But none or any issues with seating. The crowds, yes, and as always, there's a line at the Mongolian Walk, but other than that, Lido was fine.
When this ship came out, they opened up the Taste Bar, which is inside Ocean Plaza there on Deck 5. Did you notice if they utilized that space at all? Because I know a few years back, they kind of dropped the whole Taste Bar concept.
So the only that we noticed, because we spent a good bit of time in that particular area for various reasons, they actually used it on the day that we were leaving Galveston, because after we boarded the ship, we started to get some pretty severe thunderstorms. And so they actually took all of the food from outside at Guy's Pig and Anchor, and they brought it inside and began serving it at that little buffet bar. So that was it was kind of nice for us, because we were already sitting there, and it's like, oh, we don't have to go get the food. They're going to bring it to us now. But other than that, we really didn't see it used throughout the cruise. And like I said, we spent a pretty good bit of time in that area.
How about the main dining room? What time dining did you have there, and how was your experience throughout the 5 days?
So we are traditionally early diners for no other reason than that's how we started cruising. And this time we were sort of forced to get late dining. This cruise was second week of June, and we booked it last October. And apparently that was still not early enough to secure an early dining spot. So we ended up doing the 8:15 dining. We've never done the your time, and that just doesn't work for us. We were nervous about the 8:15 dining because we'd never done it before. And, our 2-year-old, usually she's kind of gearing down at the end of the day and getting ready for bed. But after this cruise, I think from now on, we will always do the 8:15 dining. It just made the day a lot better, because usually at 5 o'clock we're rushing to get ready and get to the dining room. But this was super nice, and we always make it a point to get to the dining room every night. It's kind of the highlight of our cruise. I'm the cook of the family, so anytime I can go somewhere and have someone cook and bring it to me, and I don't have to clean up, it's just the way we like to do. And we always talk about, why do people cruise? Well, we're one of those families that, the food is kind of the deciding factor as to why we cruise.
Absolutely. Did you notice, was there many long lines, or many nights of long lines or days at the pizza place?
Always. I don't think it mattered what time of day we went. And it could have had something to do with the number of kids on board, because most of the time whenever we passed the pizza place, it was mostly kids. My wife, Paige, did get pizza one night, and she said she wasn't crazy about it. We've had Carnival's pizza for the past 12 years, and it could have just been, they might have been rushing to get it out or something like that. But yeah, there always seemed to be a line back there. Even in the pouring rain, people were back there.
How was the entertainment on this 5-night cruise, and how did it stack up for y'all?
So, one of the common themes for us on this cruise was the difference in our typical itinerary we are big show and big entertainment people. I grew up spending every summer in Branson, Missouri, and if you've never been there, it's kind of like the show capital of the South. But we didn't get to do any of the theater entertainment. Our toddler does not sit still very well, not that we expect her to. But I will say that I think it was probably the same shows that we saw back in October, because I actually saw some of the show members and recognized them. And Carnival always does such a great job with their stage acts. And our only complaint with some of the entertainment is that we do wish that they would try to maybe progress a little further than just the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which we enjoy. We like all that. But maybe bring in some new stuff. But we didn't make it to the comedy clubs either. But we did notice on this cruise that we've never seen before. The lines to get into the Limelight Lounge for the comedy acts. People would line up down the promenade 2 hours before the doors would even open. And so I don't know if it's just because that's the people that were there for the show. It was some really good talent, or maybe it's just that's just how it is with Carnival now. But we did get to enjoy many, many afternoons and evenings listening to the live entertainment kind of sprinkled throughout the ship. One of our favorite things to sit and listen to is the string trio that plays in the atrium. That's always one of our favorites. And then in the Ocean Plaza, where we spent a good bit of our time, there was a 90s country duo named Southern Voice. And whenever it was one of the entertainment directors was going to give them an introduction, they said something along the lines of, well, they're from as far south as you can get. I'm thinking, maybe they're from South Louisiana like us. No, they're actually from South Africa, which is as far south as you can get. Incredible talent. And our little girl got out there on that big star in Ocean Plaza and was just dancing around and stealing the show. And it was good. The onboard entertainment for Carnival is always good. And
how were your sea days as far as crowds and congestion?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, weather played a really big part in a lot of the dynamics of this cruise, and the sea day especially. Our first sea day was on Tuesday because we left Galveston Monday, and Tuesday was a really interesting day. Typically, I try to sleep in on these cruises, and I was woken up at about 5:30 that Tuesday morning by some noises that I was not used to hearing on a cruise. And, our cabinet doors were rattling. The ship was kind of creaking. And, we've been on cruises before where you kind of just had this little gentle rock back and forth. This was not that. We were jumping waves or icebergs or hitting dolphins or something. Everything was just shaking. So I get dressed and I run down to the lobby just to get some, peeks out the window and see. And, we were kind of trying to I think the captain was trying to skirt around Tropical Storm Alberto to the best of his ability. Mm-hmm. But I looked out and I saw an angry Gulf of Mexico. I had never seen anything like this before. So I was getting kind of worried, and I found a crew member. I'm like, is this okay? Is this normal? I didn't hear any alarms. And they're like, oh, yeah, this is nothing. I'm thinking, okay, yeah. And then I looked up at deck 5 and saw a bunch of people lined up outside the fun shop. And I'm thinking, there must be a sale or something. I better go get my wife up. And so I went and poked my nose around a little bit, and it turns out it was about 30 people in line, but they were waiting for the fun shop to open so they could buy their motion sickness medicine.
Oh, jeez, man.
So it was the roughest one we had ever been on, but it was a neat experience. It was kind of cool, just that weird way to look out and see the waves. I've never seen the Gulf like that before. Yeah. And it was incredible, but it was some massive swells because, like I said, the boat wasn't rocking. It was literally up and down because of the waves. So sea day number 1 was uneventful. Besides that, we spent a lot of time exploring the ship. I had my phone in my pocket, my watch on, and I think the first 3 days chasing after our toddler, I think I averaged about 14,000 steps.
Wow, okay.
So, yeah, 2 scoops of ice cream with the chocolate cake that night.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second sea day was a lot better. We did finally get some presentable weather on that last sea day, so we spent a lot more time up on the pool deck. We finally were able to let our toddler explore the kiddie area, the water slide and everything, and she was just over the moon about that. We had a little bit of a difficult time getting her off of that, but second sea day was much, much better.
Any time in the kids club with your toddler?
It's this age is an interesting one with Carnival because I think there's one night where they offer a couple of late night hours to where you can drop her off. She wasn't quite 2. So her birthday is mid-July, and this cruise was mid-June. So she just missed that threshold for the daycare during the day. And we really didn't explore those options too much. You know, we went into this knowing that, you know, family vacation, we're going to keep her with us. We're going to let her explore, see what she likes to do. But I can tell you that walking past those areas multiple times during the cruise, I'm not sure if they would have had room for her because this was a booked, busy cruise full of kids. And, you know, maybe in the future when she gets a little bit older, she might enjoy hanging out at some of those places. But no, we didn't use any of those facilities on this trip.
How about the casino area as far as the whole smoke situation in or around it?
You know, this was one thing that I do remember from our cruise a few months ago, that when we walked on the Breeze the first day, we could smell the smoke. But on this one that we took in June, it never was a bother. And I think it could just be the demographic of the folks that were on the ship. Like I said, it was a lot of families with kids. And so the casino was never, you know, really packed, maybe except for the last night. So smoking wasn't really an issue. And then, you know, we discovered that there's a smoke-free casino on this ship. Now, we don't spend time in the casino, but it's just one of those places where we kind of like to go when people watch.
Yeah.
And, you know, because we really didn't spend much time on deck 4. You know, the casino is deck 5. The non-smoking one is deck 4. And really the only way we found out about it was one morning we were in line at the coffee shop because we do like to splurge on our specialty coffees. And one of the Carnival crew members said, "You can come with me and I'll bring you to the other coffee shop." Well, we were the only 3 that decided to go with her. And at the casino, at the non-smoking casino bar, they have an identical coffee shop. It just doesn't have the pastries and all that, but full menu, same machines. And at 7:00 in the morning, nobody's in the casino down there. So that means that nobody's at that coffee shop. It was really, really nice.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. As far as the ports of call on this 5-nighter, you mentioned it was Progresso and was it Cozumel?
Yeah, Progresso and Cozumel. So our first port of call was Cozumel. We love Cozumel, as I think most people do. And usually when we go to Cozumel, we've been there so many times, we're familiar with the island, we're comfortable down there, we know what areas to stay away from. Usually we rent a Jeep and we just go drive. And there's a little place on the other side of the island called Mescalitos. It's a locally owned place. There's nobody there. It's just a good place to sit and watch the waves come in. And you're actually on the Gulf side, and it's gorgeous. But there are no car seat laws in Cozumel, so the rental companies are not obligated to provide you with a car seat. And we surely were not going to carry one on the cruise with us. So we ended up doing a Carnival excursion, and we did the all-inclusive dolphin and manatee swimming. And, you know, when they say all-inclusive, I try to ignore that because I know that's kind of clickbait or whatever. We were very, very pleased. And, you know, several reasons we did it, but it kind of just boiled down to it was kid-friendly. And they actually, if you bring on that excursion, if you bring a child that is, I think it's 5 or under, you don't have to pay for them, which was really, really nice.
Yeah.
But it was the 4 of us, you know, 3 adults, 1 kid. They provided transportation straight from the port to the resort where they were doing it. They provided the life jackets. Of course, there was food afterwards. The food was okay. I wasn't expecting anything great. And then you have to pay for the pictures. But the experience itself of swimming with the dolphins and the manatees and up close and touching them, and it was incredible. And our toddler, she wasn't too sure about the manatees because I guess they don't look as friendly as the dolphins do. Uh-huh. But it was incredible. The staff was great. They were informative. And this was the first time that we had ever done an excursion in Cozumel. And it kind of keeps you away from that part of town where, you know, if you stop for 5 seconds, everyone's going to try to get you to buy something. But it was nice. You know, facilities were clean. The only downside of that day is it was absolutely storming all day. Mm-hmm. But on the good side of that, we stayed cool because otherwise it probably would have been kind of hot. The way that their facility is set up, it's on the water, but they kind of have like these underwater cages built for that way the dolphins can't get out, and it's wide open out there. So if it wouldn't have been a cloudy, rainy day, it probably would have been unbearably hot, at least for our toddler.
You wrap up Cozumel and you head to Progresso. How was your day there? Did the weather improve at all?
Progresso was an interesting one. So we leave Cozumel and we're sitting in the dining room it was probably closer to 9 o'clock. We were finishing up and the captain comes over the loudspeaker. And, we knew about the storm. We knew that before we got on the boat. And it was strange because I noticed that morning before we got off in my Carnival Hub app that we were refunded the taxes and port fees for Progresso. I didn't pay any attention to it. I didn't think about it. Well, he comes over the loudspeaker and he says, there's unfavorable weather conditions in Progresso, which will not allow us to go there. And we understand that this affects your itinerary and your original plans. And he paused. I'm thinking, okay, here we go, another sea day. And he says, but we've communicated with port officials and we are turning around and going back to Cozumel. And as soon as he said that, the whole dining room just erupted in cheers and applause because I think everyone was happy to go back to Cozumel.
Awesome. So your day 2 in Cozumel, what did you do?
Yeah, so our original plan for Progresso, none of us had ever been to Progresso, and I just looking at the excursions and some reviews, there wasn't a whole lot to do there with a toddler. So our original plan was that myself and our daughter, that we were going to stay on the ship. I had never experienced a ship during the port day. And my wife and our cousin Sherry, they were just going to go explore Progresso. So we just mirrored that, and that's exactly what we did in Cozumel. They got off, they went and explored, did some shopping, because, like I said, we're familiar enough with Cozumel that we're comfortable of going around there. And myself and our daughter, we just stayed on the boat and explored. And I got to tell you, the cruise ship on a port day is not a bad place to be.
Did a lot of people treat it as a sea day, or were you one of the minorities?
Well, I believe because it was Cozumel, people treat it as a port day. I think everyone, for the most part, has the same feelings about Cozumel. They enjoy it, and they don't want to miss a chance to go. So it was almost kind of creepy because we've never done the cruise ship on the port day. And so it was myself, my daughter, and I don't know, I may have counted 100 other people that I ran into throughout the course of the day. It was wonderful. It was literally like having the ship to ourselves.
You wrap up Cozumel and you make your way back to Texas. How was the debark process once you got back there? You mentioned you came back to a different terminal.
Yeah, we were a little surprised whenever I walked out up on the pool deck early that morning, and I looked across and I said, well, where's the garage? And then, they informed us that we docked at a different terminal, which it was maybe a quarter mile down. It was just the next terminal. I forget the numbers. But I think the reason we had to do that is because we were arriving back on a Saturday, as was the Carnival Jubilee. And the terminal that we were disembarking at, I don't think it has the capacity to handle the Jubilee. Gotcha. So it really wasn't an issue. And debarkation on the ship, because we had faster to the fun, we had the option of doing all these different times. And we could have gotten off the ship at like 7 that morning, but we decided there was no reason to rush. I think we picked like a 9:30 debark time, and we did self-assist. We brought our luggage with us. Even though we had our little girl stuff, we still packed reasonably. The first day on the ship, we weren't like some of the folks we saw rolling on with 5 suitcases and 10 packs of drinks and stuff. But anyway, we made it down to deck 3 at our call time, and the line was long. I don't know what took so long for folks to get off this time. I'm not sure what the issue was. It could have been the terminal, because I do remember in our previous Galveston cruises we did disembark at the larger terminal, so that helped. But we were standing there for about 20 minutes or so, and our toddler's starting to get restless, and I'm just thinking, man, this is going to take a while. And we're standing there by the elevator bank, where the glass elevators are, and the other elevators right there by the atrium. They're all closed because they're transporting luggage up and down. And all of a sudden, this elevator opens, and a Carnival crew member looks at us and says, "Do you want to get off the ship?" And I'm looking like, is this a trick or something? I said, "Yes, ma'am. There's 4 of us, and we're ready to go." She says, "Okay, get on the elevator with me." So we get on. She brings us down another level, and we actually disembark at another gangway that was below the one on deck 3. and that was quick and easy. We got right off, and you almost have to run through the port whenever you get off at Galveston. They don't they don't give you time to wait around for anything. So once we stepped off the ship, we, even with having to walk a couple blocks to the garage, we were back in our car in 15 minutes or less.
You got more steps in then, going from that new terminal to the garage, more than you thought you were going to get, huh?
And it was a little crazy because I think they're doing a lot of construction down there, and I know it's for improvements. But again, I was really, really glad that we parked in the garage because a lot of other people, whenever they were trying to drive to the port, and pick people up, you have to understand that, so Carnival Breeze, you've got about 3,700 guests. The Jubilee, I don't know, it's like, 6,000 or 7,000. All of us are getting off at the same time. You've got another 3,700 getting on the Breeze and another 6,000 or 7,000 trying to get on the Jubilee. Yeah. It's madness. Yeah. It is absolute madness. So the garage, and the parking is actually through the Port of Galveston. When you leave the garage, you take a right and you miss all the traffic because a lot of people try to go down that, I think it's Harborside Drive or something like that. Mm-hmm. You can't, impossible. So we were able to shoot straight north, and traffic was non-existent for us.
You mentioned you cashed in some points for Faster to the Fun. Do you leverage a lot of the Carnival Fun points with their credit card?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It wasn't much.
Yeah.
It was just a couple of dollars here, and then we had some gift cards from family. So, and I think the cost was like. I think the original cost is like $99 a room. And I think Carnival's cost on Faster to the Fun depends on the length of your cruise.
Yeah, it does.
And, looking back on it, would we do Faster to the Fun again? I don't know. We actually have another cruise booked in November out of New Orleans, but it's just going to be adults this time. And when it's just us, we don't have to bring anything on the ship. It's just, we check our 1 or 2 bags, and we walk on with passports in our pocket and some cash, and really that's it. The advantage of the biggest advantage that we had is that we were able to use the Diamond and Platinum line at guest services. So if we had an issue, we just walked right up. There's somebody right there, or we could just pick up the phone, and there's a dedicated line at guest services for that. So that perk was nice. But our long-term goal is to let's just try to get those loyalty benefits soon.
That's right. Do you have any first-time tips to offer anyone sailing Carnival Breeze or doing that itinerary?
Let the porter take your luggage. This was a lifesaver for us because, like I said, we did have to bring a couple of extra things for her, not a bunch, but we kind of laughed at whenever we got on the ship. We saw all of these people with multiple suitcases, multiple book sacks, 12 packs of soft drinks, bottles of wine, all the while they're trying to stand in line to get food, and it just makes things extremely crowded. We've been sailing with Carnival for since 2014, and we have yet to have an issue with a porter getting our luggage to our room. So that's first thing, and then. And that's not really specific to Carnival Breeze, and this one isn't either. But my second tip would be to do just that. Tip. We always do the prepaid gratuities because that gets divvied up and given to those people that you don't see, the behind-the-scenes workers. But what I noticed on my very first cruise, and I always just make this standard practice, those people that wait on us or help us. I'm not saying you have to give everybody $20 every time you see them. But at the start of the cruise, if they're helping you and you're tipping them, they're going to remember you. Because one morning I was sitting down on Ocean Plaza, and after this was like the third or fourth morning, we'd always go and get our coffee. And so I'm just down there sitting, and one of the attendants that was working at the coffee shop walked by to go get some supplies, and she recognized me and called me by name and said, "Would you like your coffee?" And I said, "Well, yes, ma'am, but you've got a line." And she said, "No, give me your card. I'll take care of you." So, and not saying that that's always the case, but it's kind of a pattern that we've seen, that if you take care of those who take care of you, they'll return the favor.
You nailed it, man. Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this cruise for you?
It was a huge adjustment bringing our toddler with us, and we wouldn't trade it for anything because, we're a family of travelers. I mean, she took her first cross-country road trip at about 6 weeks old. But there at the end of the trip, on the last sea day when the weather finally cooperated, we were able to bring her up on that kiddie water slide. And and really other parents, of toddlers would relate to this. But it was just that moment of seeing her climb up there all by herself and slide down, and just that smile and giggle and laugh. It's like, yep, this was totally worth it.
Great memory, certainly. In closing here, your final thoughts of Carnival Breeze.
It's always going to be one of our favorite ships because we've spent the most time on it. I'm sure one day we'll upgrade to XL class, but the ship is great. They have taken such good care of it. Beautiful ship. And, just whoever goes on it, help take care of it too.
Been talking with Eric about his 5-night cruise on Carnival Breeze down to Cozumel. Eric, thank you so much for your time, my friend. Have a good one.
Absolutely, Doug. Thanks. You too.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,